If you tell someone you are, that statement you are, especially an authority figure to a child or a authority figure like a medical practitioner or something to a patient, there is this almost like absorption of that's who I am. And there's been a lot of research around the dangers of saying my fibromyalgia
Mhm.
because of the fact that you then get yourself stuck. So labels are very limiting. And when you limit yourself, your own value of, oh, I'm just that, and that's not good, it's broken. It affects your, how you see yourself. So it feeds back into to identity and it kind of just, it's very, very disruptive. And there's a lot of science around that. We saw in some of the clinical trials that we've done is that when someone is consistently labeled, like you've got this depression, you've got that, you've got that, you've got that. I'm thinking of one particular subject in our study that had years of childhood trauma, but like really bad, to the point where the only way that this person could cope was with their coping mechanism was suppression. And they just went through their life and went through school and went, went to university, and it hit them in their mid 20s. And by their sort of 30s, they were collapsing. And in that process of in their 20s, even as a teenager, they were showing up with behavioral and emotional and perspective and bodily sensational signals. They were showing up in ways that were being labeled. But the core issue was, and they were told over and over and over again, and this is a story that happens so many times, way too often. Their symptoms were looked at as though they were part of this medical disease that they have, and they were told they have a chemical imbalance. Meanwhile, that research on the chemical imbalance of
Yes.
serotonin,
Please say more on that.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's a hypothesis that
correct.
research has been done on, and the research was never ever confirming of that hypothesis. And in fact, much research has been done and evaluated showing that that is not the case. People do not have depression because of a chemical imbalance. So if someone is labeled, oh, you just have a depression because you have a clinical imbalance, that person's already feeling bad about themselves. Now you tell them that there's something wrong with their brain as well.
How
You've just
scary is that? You're like, oh my God, my brain's broken.
exactly,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
identify that they, as an individual, that attacks the value system.
Hmm.
So that's on the identity labeling side. It's very limiting, and also, the thing is if you label someone with a label that's not even scientific, it's unfair on the person. 80 about around about 95% of the world's population believe that depression comes from a chemical imbalance. That's where we're sitting today. It's an absolute crime because there is a paper was released by a group of scientists last year. It had in July last year. It had within the first few months, it had more views. It was over 20 million views than any published paper for a very long period of time. It hit all the media. Even people like CNN were talking about this article, and it was not always positive. It was like negative. People criticizing, saying, "Oh, but that is the cause of depression."
Well, they were scared. I think people who hear that are like, but wait,
Yeah,
how can I justify taking my Prozac? How can I justify taking my
absolutely.
SSRI then? I've been doing it for 20 years. Doesn't that, like, have I made the wrong choice? Like that's very
Very,
confronting.
very scary. It's very
Yeah,
confronting. It's very scary. And the last thing I want to do is add to someone feeling bad about themselves, because if
yeah.
you were to take that, that's not on you. If you were told by a medical professional that that's what you have and that's what you need to take, who are you to question that unless you know more? And if that's the consistent public messaging, then that's all you know. And medical professionals, like 95%, 90% of those kind of prescriptions for antidepressants are given by a medical, like a doctor. They've had a 3 or 4 week rotation in the mind. They haven't had training. I've had nearly 15 years of training in mind. There's a huge difference between someone who's had 3 weeks versus nearly 15 years of training and 40 years of research in the field and 25 years of clinical experience. And that's just me. There's thousands of therapists out there and clinicians and people that have had similar training and experience. That is not the point I'm making is to tell people that your depression is from a chemical imbalance is the wrong way around.